Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode If You Could Hide to Cola podcast. My name's Daniel. This is my brother Clive.
Hello, everybody, and welcome. Daniel, we're introducing more characters. Again, as we say, I mean, I don't want to take away from what we're actually doing, but I feel like we're introducing these people that have gone before. We're talking about, we've talked about Martin Harris, we've talked about Oliver Cowdery, Hiram Smith, and we're going to get into a lot more people now. But then on top of all these people that we're mentioning, there's even more. There's the translation of the Book of Mormon and everything that comes across with it. So there's a lot to cover, and there's a lot of doctrine in there as well. So, I mean, to teach this one in one sitting, it's going to be very difficult for any gospel doctrine teacher.
You're not wrong. I'll kick us off with a quote. And this is a talk from Joseph's mother, Lucy, who lived on, obviously, much, much longer than her son. She says, "And even if this were the case, where is your faith? Where is your confidence in God? Do you know that all things are in his hands? He made all things and still rules over them. And how easy a thing it would be with God if every saint here would just lift their desires to him in prayer, that the way might be opened before us. How easy would it be for God to cause the ice to break away, and in a moment's time we could be off on our journey. How can you expect the Lord to prosper you when you are continually murmuring against him?" And when this happens, she's at a conference, right? She's asked to speak as the mother of the martyred prophet, and a person yells out to her when she's speaking, "Is the Book of Mormon true?" And then she goes on this tirade of just how true the Book of Mormon is. And she says she wishes her voice was louder and that she could shake people with her voice. She says that she wishes it was as loud as the trumpet of Michael the Archangel. She said she wants to declare it from aisle to aisle and sea to sea. And she goes on and on and on. Just a wonderful lady. And I might add as well, a wonderful historian. Joseph's mother writes this autobiography later in life, and so many of the references that we have from her voice. She was there. She was there with the prophet the whole time. When Joseph first gets the plates, he brings them inside, and Joseph's mom immediately thinks, "Well, let's get people to help you translate." And she's the one that goes to first petition the Harris family to get money off them to help them get to New York to go and see professors that can help translate the scriptures. Little does she know at that stage that it was going to be translated by the power of God, but she was into action mode immediately. "Well, who can help you, Joseph? It's taking you this long to get the plates. Who can help you interpret them?" And so she was just such a remarkable person in that time.
It's like we talked about last week, how important it is to have those people around you to be as strong as you. So if Joseph was doing this by himself, it wouldn't have succeeded. He needed those strong people around him to pump him up and go, "Okay, let's get it done. Let's do it. What can we do? How can we help? Let's get this thing moving."
So we're doing Doctrine and Covenants 12 to 17. And then we're also finishing off Joseph Smith history today. So we'll see if we get through in one episode or two. But we do cover a little bit here. So let's get into it. Let's start with section 12. So easy to see here a couple of good ideas when you're reading the Doctrine and Covenants is to make sure that you're checking the heading. This particular revelation is towards Joseph Knight in May of 1829. Joseph Knight is a staunch supporter of Joseph, and actually provides him some aid, right? Helps him with some supplies.
Well, yeah, Joseph Knight, he met Joseph back in 1826 when he was working for Josiah Stowell. And he becomes good friends with him, and he provides him with, not only does he provide him with things that he needs, whether it be foods, materials, whatever it is, but he travels 30 miles on his horse to go and provide these things to Joseph and Oliver. Not only that, the horse and wagon that Joseph used to get the plates, they were from him. So he is another key important person that helped this work go on. Obviously it would have gone on anyway, but it would have been so much more difficult. So the Lord has put this person in Joseph's place in Joseph's way, so that he can go, okay, well, here's a horse, here's a cart, whatever you need, I'll help you out. So it was great. Something that we might note, Daniel, or you might notice as you're reading the Doctrine and Covenants. I mentioned, I think it was last week, how the Lord gets excited. The first verse, a great and marvelous work is about to come forth. Now, section 12 and section 14, the first 6 verses are identical to section 11. So this is the Lord going, well, here's this new person, and here's the same, like a marvelous works fast come forth among children of men, reap, the field is white, like this is what we're here for. This is these people that are called, this is your calling. And then, the little bit at the end. So it's like, we're here the field is white, so that the world is prepared for this doctrine. Let's go harvest it. And then, there's other doctrine on top of that.
Interesting. Clive, in section 12, I've got verse 8 highlighted. And no one can assist in this work except he shall be humble and full of love, having faith, hope, and charity, being temperate in all things, whatsoever shall be entrusted to his care. I think it sums up the character of Joseph Knight, as you've just described, the assistance that he gave to the prophet, and was a staunch friend and defender of the prophet. And this revelation here is it feels like to me that is kind of topping that off. And Joseph Smith is giving this revelation, and I'm imagining Joseph Smith is given the revelation, ticking this off. Like Joseph Knight is this person, and he is humble, he is full of love, he's certainly full of charity and the hope and the support that he's giving.
It's good because these people that truly helped, that are mentioned in the Doctrine and Covenants, it's like, you haven't just fallen by the wayside. Like, you don't do this for the glory, but to be shown that you're cared about, that you'll be remembered, that you've been written in this document forever. It's got to be, first of all, you got to be a certain type of person. But second of all, like, it's just got to be just a joy to go, okay, well, I can't believe the Lord has recognized me. Joseph's the chosen one, but I've been recognized. I've been mentioned. The Lord is talking to me at this point. I just think it's really, amazing.
Section 13 is where Joseph and Oliver, it's mentioned that they, on May the 15th of 1829, they received the Aaronic priesthood. They received the Aaronic priesthood from the hands of someone who identifies himself as John the Baptist. And I'll read out just this one verse, Clive, and then I know you know a bit about it. So why don't we just have a very quick conversation, then we can get into David Whitmer. Upon you, my fellow servants, in the name of Messiah, I confer the priesthood of Aaron, which holds the keys of the ministering of angels and of the gospel of repentance and of baptism by immersion for the remission of sins. And this shall never be taken away from the earth until the sons of Levi do offer again an offering unto the Lord in righteousness.
So on this, Daniel, there's key people, Moroni, he was the last one to have the plates. So he was the one that was told, go and pass the plates on to the next person. It's not Nephi that would come down. It's Moroni, it's his calling. So John the Baptist, well, why John the Baptist? Why was it his calling to come and confer the Aaronic priesthood? So as we know, going way back, let's go way back to Moses, right? So Moses had the Melchizedek priesthood, and his brother Aaron had the Aaronic priesthood along with a lot of other Levites. Now, when the people rebelled, Moses was taken away. So Moses was translated, it just sort of walked off according to the scriptures. And so the lesser priesthood was kept on the earth to those that were rebellious. Now, there was obviously some worthy people for it. So the people that are direct descendants of Aaron, it's kind of difficult to explain, but basically they automatically have the Aaronic priesthood, but they still need to be worthy of it. So John the Baptist was a direct descendant of Aaron, Moses' brother. It talks about that Zechariah, his father, was a priest of the tribe of Levi, which Levi, Aaron, and so on underneath. But his mother was also a daughter of Aaron. So John the Baptist was a direct descendant of this line. So he was the one at the, at the restoration when the Lord came the first time, when Christ was born. He was that one. He was the one there. So it only makes sense that after the great apostasy, the one person who was a direct descendant, the one that was truly prepared his whole life for the Aaronic priesthood, it only makes sense that he would be the one that came back and conferred the Aaronic priesthood to Joseph.
Okay, so now we move into section 14, and this is really the one that I've been most excited to talk about. And this is the introduction of the final witness, which is David Whitmer. And why is David Whitmer so special? Well, he lives the longest. He never rejoins the church after leaving. He falls out with Joseph Smith entirely. In fact, he denounces the office of the first presidency. He doesn't agree with the office of the first presidency. He doesn't agree with a hierarchical structure in the church. He thinks everything should be a flat structure and that no one should be over the other. Why is this important? Why is it important that he got excommunicated? It's important because after all of that, David Whitmer would continue to tell people that he saw the plates, he saw the angel. So fast forward a couple of months, instead of being January, it's now April, and he's called into the meeting. Joseph Smith's present, and so are members of the High Council. And he's accused of 4 things: not observing the word of wisdom, having unchristian-like behavior, neglecting to attend his meetings, and also of possessing what was described as the same spirit as the dissenters. Well, David Whitmer doesn't attend this meeting. And so the High Council decide that he hasn't attended, therefore there's nothing else to investigate, therefore you're excommunicated from the church. So it's now April 1838, and David Whitmer is excommunicated. Why is that important? Well, David Whitmer is he's the longest. He doesn't die till 1888, and he stays in Richmond, Missouri. And he's interviewed more than 20 times from 1869 to 1888. And his testimony of the Book of Mormon never changes. David Whitmer hears in 1881, he hears that 2 trusted sources have published the notion that David Whitmer has finally denied his testimony. So he gets wind that these trusted sources have denied the testimony, and he gets extremely offended by it. Highly, highly offended. In fact, what he does is he writes a letter, and it starts with, "Unto all nations, kindred, tongues, unto those present, these presents shall come." And then he says, "It's been represented by John Murphy that this has happened, that I've denied my testimony." And he says, "He that hath an ear to hear it, let him hear it." He says that he endorses the teachings of the Mormons, that he endorses the Book of Mormon. He stands by his testimony of the Book of Mormon. And then that's not enough for David Whitmer. He goes around to people, the most trusted people in Richmond, and he says to them, "Do you consider me a trustworthy fellow?" And they say, "Yes, of course." And then they say, he says something like, "Would I lie?" No, you're an extremely trustworthy fellow and a highly respected person in the community. And these people sign this material, this affidavit, I guess, that David Whitmer is a trustworthy man, and that if he says he saw the Book of Mormon, he says he saw the Book of Mormon. If he says he saw an angel, if he has a testimony he saw an angel, he saw the angel. So he goes around painstakingly talking to all these people. Alexander Donovan is one of them, who's probably the most recognizable, I guess, from the list. He's one that arrests Joseph Smith and is told to execute him, and he doesn't. So this event is remarkable and kind of unknown in the church, but it's said that he denied it. he is so offended by this idea that he could deny that this event.
Yeah, it's good because they always hear all the negative stuff, like what we talked about before. I think in the very first episode, there's so much negativity around those that left the church, but to understand how they left and what their testimonies were when they left, none of them denied it. And so, well, let's talk about how David Whitmer came up to this, how he came to the church, right? So we already spoke about how he knew Oliver Cowdery. So he'd heard about Joseph Smith. Oliver Cowdery had heard about Joseph Smith. So Oliver Cowdery went to his house on the way to visit Joseph Smith. And David Whitmer was like, I've heard about him as well. Let me know your findings and let me know what you think.
Yeah.
So Oliver Cowdery writes him a few letters, doesn't he? And he basically says, yeah, this guy is true. Everything he says is true. And basically bears his testimony to David Whitmer, and David Whitmer believes him. And, he wants to be around Joseph Smith. He wants to see what's going on and has this testimony.
Yeah, it's his dad so Oliver writes him and says, basically, we need a place to translate the Book of Mormon. You should send a carriage to us and basically help pick us up. And Emma, we want to come to your place. And so David Whitmer asks his dad what he should do. And his dad says, well, you should pray about it. If that's what you think, you should pray about it. And of course, so David Whitmer does. And so I think that's one of the key moments here, that there's an influence from the Whitmer family. The Whitmer family would go on to form the main group of the 8 witnesses. So they play a really pivotal role in the translating in the translating of the Book of Mormon.
So there's a really interesting story actually about David Whitmer. So in fact, I'll just read the story directly from Orson Pratt's diary here. It says, soon after this, the arrival of the letter from Oliver Cowdery, Joseph sent for me to come to Harmony to get him and Oliver to bring them to my father's house. I did not know what to do. I was pressed with my work. I had some 20 acres to plow, so I concluded I would finish plowing and then go. I got up one morning to go to work as usual, and on going to the field, found between 5 and 7 acres of my ground had been plowed during the night. I do not know who did it, but it was done just as I would have done it myself, and the plow was left standing in the furrow. So really interesting. And that is from 40 years after, this all happened. So this is long after he's left the church. He's explaining this incredible miracle has happened that, I was too busy and I was just going to go afterwards. But hey, sometime in the night, somebody's done this plowing work for me. So I had plenty of time then. And what an incredible miracle that's happened. You don't really hear much about that.
Wow. Yeah, incredible. Because this was done, David Whitmer gets this huge testimony. He can't believe it. And he finishes plowing the field. He has to sow plaster of Paris into the soil. I have no idea what that means, but that's what he has to do. So he sets off on a horse and he meets Joseph and Oliver half-ish way. Joseph and Oliver have still got a couple of days carriage ride to the Whitmer house. And so David Whitmer joins them in the carriage. So now there's Oliver, Joseph, and David. Martin, of course, isn't there at this time. And as they're traveling, a man comes next to the carriage. And he's described as being 5'10", quite sweaty. And they see him pull up next to him. They ask him, what are you doing? Do you want a lift? Do you want to hop in and come with us? The man explains that he's on the way to the Hill Cumorah. And he then disappears out of sight and they don't see him. They ask Joseph, they say, who do you think that was? Do you know anyone? Do you know who it was? David Whitmer reports that Joseph looks into the seer stone and turns pale to almost transparent. Joseph Smith says that's one of the Nephites. And he had the Book of Mormon. He had the plates with him in that bag he held. This is one of the points, Clive. The reason I wanted to tell this particular story is one of the problems we have with, I'm going to call it anti-Mormon doctrine or anti-Mormon news.
Yep.
Is that people say that Martin, Joseph, Oliver, and David didn't see things Everything was in their mind. Joseph Smith convinced Oliver Cowdery that it was in his mind. He convinced Martin Harris that there was something there that wasn't there. And Joseph Smith was able to do this to people. This is what they say. But when you read these things from David Whitmer, he says, I saw this person. I saw this person come up. I saw this happen. I saw my fields plowed. I saw an angel. Um, these other statements from someone, David Whitmer had absolutely nothing to do with the church, nothing at all. In fact, he was interviewed so much because people couldn't believe how good his testimony was. They would say to him, are you sure you saw the angel? Are you sure you saw the plates? Yes, I saw the plates, he would say. I've seen them. I've seen them with my own eyes and I can't deny it. And then another newspaper person would come and say, what did you see? You said you saw this. Did that happen? Were you tricked? Were you conned? He says, no, I saw it. And this is this idea that Joseph Smith would had this crazy ability to be able to just plant something in someone's head and go, you saw this, didn't you? Yeah, I did. But you saw this one. Yeah, I saw that. Yeah. No, these people had no interest in joining the church, but still said they saw the things they said they saw. And a story like that where he sees the Nephite is a witness. It's another strike in the good camp, that there was something else that he said he saw, and he maintained that. 1888, he dies. He gets excommunicated from the church in 1838. He lives for 50 years, and at any stage could have gone, oh, look, maybe not. No, for 50 years he maintained exactly what he said he saw, and sometimes might have sprinkled a little bit of extra, give us a bit of extra news. Martin Harris says he saw 10 times more than people knew what he saw. Maybe David Whitmer was the same. So just an incredible testimony from this man who I just think is incredible. And the fact that he was excommunicated under harsh conditions makes me believe him and want to love him all the more.
Yeah, that's an amazing story about the Nephi. I never heard that story before. That's quite amazing.
Yeah.
There is another story, not as amazing as that, don't get me wrong, but when Joseph and Oliver do finally get to Peter Whitmer's house, which is David Whitmer's father, they're translating. They're upstairs translating, and there's a lady named Sarah Conrad who's David Whitmer's cousin. She said that she sees men coming down after translating being exceedingly white and looking strange. And when she asked about what they were doing up there, and she was told, about the translation, she eventually joined the church because of that, because of the things that she had seen. So for people to say, well, you didn't see what you saw, there's someone completely offshoot. No one hears about Sarah Conrad, but that's something that she had seen, and she felt the spirit from it. Just seeing someone come down so white and strange looking.
The Whitmers, that whole translation process in the Whitmers' home is totally underutilized gold in the histories of the church. Mary Whitmer, David Whitmer's mum, is mad one day. She's mad at Joseph and Oliver. The house is full. It's got Joseph, Oliver, and Emma, all as extra adults. And she feels the burden that she has to keep the house clean and keep them fed. One day, Joseph and Oliver, they go to the pond. They say they're going to skip stones. And Mary Whitmer is so mad. Why are they going to skip stones? Can't they come and help me with some household chores? Who are they to go and skip stones while I'm here slaving away? And she thinks that she's going to kick them out. She thinks she's going to kick them out of the house, and that's it. They're done for. And so therefore the Book of Mormon cannot be translated. They couldn't go to Emma's parents' house. There's nowhere else for them to go. She goes to milk a cow. She goes out the back and she goes to milk some cows. And the angel Moroni appears to her and tells her how grateful that he is, that she is putting up with this, and that she just has to deal with the work for a little bit longer. And then he takes out the plates and shows her the plates. Mary Whitmer leaves the church. I think she leaves the church in 1835, 1836. and she never denies the truthfulness of the gospel. In fact, the Whitmers, they are the holders of the manuscript. They have them. They had the manuscript, and the family always believed that there was a divine, the Almighty protected the manuscript. That family was in charge of keeping this manuscript alive. In I'm going to say 1856, and I wish I had better notes on me. Their house is ripped to shreds by a tornado. The Whitmer's home is ripped to shreds by a tornado. The only room left surviving is the room that the manuscripts are in. The rest of the house is leveled.
Wow.
The Whitmers are an unbelievable family. They're an unbelievable family. And that story of those people coming down from upstairs, it's almost not surprising. The revelation and the spiritual nature of that home is absolutely second to none in the history of the church. There's the Nauvoo house, the red brick store. What happened in that home in such an infant gospel is nothing short of miraculous every single day.
Just something I just want to mention about section 14. Like I mentioned at the beginning, it starts again, a marvelous work is about to come forth around judgment. And again, the first 6 verses are the same as 12 and 11. It just shows that something exciting is happening. So we talked there, that's about David Whitmer, and then the next it talks about Peter Whitmer and John Whitmer. And like you said, the Whitmers are very key, very important to the progressing of the church. Yes, they might have eventually left, but it was, I mean, everyone finds church difficult now. If church changes times, it's hard to go, and you don't change your testimony because of it.
Yeah.
So, well, should we talk about the translation of the Book of Mormon in Joseph Smith history?
So that starts off in Joseph Smith history. I won't do chapter 1 joke again. In 66, there's an introduction of there's an introduction of Oliver Cowdery. The men are translating, and then they go, "Oh, well, what about that? We don't know anything about it. Let's go pray." So then they get the gift of the Aaronic priesthood, and accordingly, we went and were baptized as 71. I baptized him first, and afterwards he baptized me. After which I laid my hands upon his head and ordained him to the Aaronic priesthood, and afterwards he laid his hands on me and ordained me the same priesthood. So we were commanded. And this is where we get this incredible quote from Oliver Cowdery, which is what the asterisk is in our scriptures here, where he says, "These are the days never to be forgotten, to sit under the ground and sit under the sound of the voice dictated by the inspiration of heaven." This incredible quote by Oliver Cowdery. And then, of course, then the men go next into getting the Melchizedek priesthood from Peter, James, and John. I seem to remember a story where they're actually running from a mob, a group of people, and then they stumble into this scenario. It's not quite as romantic as we read it in the scriptures and went and prayed, but I should check my reference for that one.
Speaking of when they get the Melchizedek priesthood, every time I find a reference to them getting it, there's no official date.
No.
Have you found there's no official date? So yeah, it is a bit of an odd story because that does happen. They stumble upon it, and because I guess it's so great and there's so much going on, they never say, okay, it was this day, this time. Because when they did the baptism in the Aaronic priesthood, they went and they prayed specifically because they'd read about it. But then with the Melchizedek priesthood, because all that happened, there's no specifics in there. It's interesting.
Yeah. And in line with the history of the church, it's in line with so for me, it's in line with spiritual things that I've had in my life. I haven't quickly written them down. I think I've got a couple of things in my notes in my phone where I've had an experience and I've quickly wanted to write it down and record it as clear as I can. But outside of that, some things that have happened to me, I think of a couple of occasions, but there's no way for the life of me I could tell you the date. I could probably maybe tell you the year.
Yeah.
Probably about it.
Yeah.
You'd be a much better record keeper than I.
Me?
Yeah.
No, I don't think so.
I
I mean, my mission journal is today was like yesterday.
Really?
Not a great record keeper. No. So that when we
Most of
Joseph
your
Smith, like,
missionary journal is today I learned more yo-yo tricks. Today I became master of yo-yo.
through the Spirit, of course.
Yeah. As a note, Clive did not spend his entire mission playing yo-yo, just a small part. So what we've done, we went and we tried to record us translating a book. So Clive's got a Dutch, it's Dutch, isn't it? Dutch Bible,
It's a Dutch Bible from
like 100 years ago.
1808 or something like
Okay,
that. Yeah,
it's a family heirloom of your wife, and I don't know why they're not Dutch, are they?
they are Dutch. Yeah,
Oh,
good knowing my family. Yeah.
so so it's old. It's in a dust jacket and it's in a zipped case and stuff
Yeah.
and whatnot. So Clive, why don't you explain the process that you went through? And so we decided that, well, we knew the rule. We wanted to translate a book and see for ourselves what it was like. With the rules were, Clive, you were the translator. You were or dictating to me. I was writing down. I was scribe. I was playing the role of Oliver and Emma and Joseph, all these other people that were scribe Martin. I was playing their role, and you were playing the role of Joseph Smith. So why don't you take us through that, and we'll cut some images in and out as we go through this.
Well, the first thing we wanted to do is we didn't want to dictate. I didn't want to dictate to you something that I just knew off by heart. Like Joseph gets the plates and everything is new to him. So instead of starting with Genesis, which we've all read as many times we've read Nephi, we sort of just opened up and I think we ended up on Chronicles. And so now with modern day technology, because I don't know Dutch, now with modern day technology, the Google app translates anything you hold the camera to.
Right.
So I held my phone, which you'll see, over the Dutch writing, and it automatically translated it for us, which was absolutely incredible. And Joseph Smith used the Urim and Thummim. He looked down, and the writing changed to the way that he understood it. So yeah, I opened up to a random section. I read it to you, and it's sort of at a certain point, I felt like we were in a rhythm, but I didn't know because I didn't stop to say, "Are we in a rhythm?" So I would read. What I always wondered was, you can talk to me right now, and I can say exactly what you're saying,
Right.
word for word, as you say it, but I don't understand what you're saying. I'm just repeating it.
Yeah.
And I thought it would be the same with translation, but the way that we got to read and the way that you said you translate, we sort of understood what we were reading, which is great because then it just proves that Joseph Smith and Oliver, when they were reading, they did come across things that they didn't understand. Hey, what is that? That's about baptism. Hey, well, let's go find out about that.
Yeah, I agree. There's a couple of things that were similar to the original Book of Mormon manuscript. I had no punctuation. It was going way too fast for me to think about the structure of a sentence to punctuate. So I had no verses. I didn't know when a verse started. I didn't know when a verse ended. And so I was just writing words. And you're right. I actually thought I would just be writing words, but I wasn't. I was listening to the sentence and I was writing the sentence, even though it was 3 words, then 3 more words, then 4 words, then 3 words. I was listening to the sentence in my mind and I was actually understanding what I was writing in terms of it was a coherent sentence. It wasn't just, of cedar, timber, there's something about Solomon,
Yep.
kings. It wasn't just these random words. It was a coherent sentence. So I can imagine through our little, couple of hour exercise that we did that, yeah, Joseph and Ola have gone, oh, what's that? Let's go put this down for a moment. Let's go check it out. The other thing that I found, Clive, in the writing is that you get some hardcore cramp. Like you get some hardcore cramp in your hand because
Yeah.
I felt like you needed to be on a rhythm for your app to work. So I didn't want to slow you down. There was a couple of times where I said, hang on a sec. And I had to then write that sentence because you were too far ahead of me. Which we know, parts of that happened in the translation as well. I wrote as quick as I could, and my handwriting's an absolute abysmal. There was no way anyone on earth could read what I've wrote except me. I'm sure of it. And so another really interesting part of that is the amount of errors in the first edition of the Book of Mormon. So Oliver Cowdery takes the manuscript, and Joseph's so worried that it's going to get pinched like the 116 pages. So Oliver rewrites the manuscript at Joseph's request, but so many errors are made. Tons of errors are made. And you can just, as I'm doing this, I'm seeing why tons of errors are made, because I'm just scooting through this. I didn't want to disturb you in your rhythm. So I'm just getting through this thing as quick as I possibly could to not say, oh, slow down again. Oh, hang on a second. What did you say? And so, yeah, lots of errors in that first edition. When Oliver Cowdery goes to print the second edition, he fixes tons of errors. Thousands is what we understand. Thousands of errors are fixed in the second. Errors from the manuscript, errors from the type in the store. And then Joseph Smith prints one in 1842, a final homage before his martyrdom.
One other thing I might just mention, you said that at one point Joseph and Oliver go and skip stones, like they take a break. We did, I think it was 30 verses, maybe. It took us an hour. Even though I was just reading, it was quite exhausting. I read a bit and I stop, and I read a bit and I stop. But you were writing.
Yeah.
So for them to stop and take a break, I mean, that's nothing.
Yeah, take a break. I mean, David Whitmer says at one stage they were doing it from morning till night. That
Yeah.
obviously didn't happen every day. They still had to go and work, and they obtained a whole bunch of things within the church, revelations and whatnot. So they were busy. Holy, that was a hardcore exercise, a fun one, and it gives a little insight into how it was. But oh man, I don't know if I could. Honestly, I do not know if I could write the whole Book of Mormon out with you translating it like that through the app.
I agree. I mean, yeah, it just gives you sort of more of an appreciation of what they went through for us.
Yeah. So, Clive, section 17 is this is Joseph Smith, and there's a revelation that they're going to get to be the three witnesses. So, in verse 2, and it is by your faith that you shall obtain a view of them, he says, even by that faith which was had by the prophets of old. And after that you have obtained faith and have seen them with your eyes, you shall testify of them by the power of God. And this you shall do, that my servant Joseph Smith Jr. may not be destroyed, that I may bring about my righteous purposes unto the children of men in this work. It's a bit strange language used here, that if they don't do it, Joseph's going to be destroyed. Oh, geez, that's a bit negative. And what does that mean? Joseph Smith's going to be destroyed. So Oliver Cowdery, gun to your head. You don't do this, Joseph's going to die. Well, I don't think that's the case. I think that's how it's read. And sometimes, we hear a bit of that anti-media that this is a Joseph Smith thing. But in reality, Joseph's message, Joseph's life's work, the reason why he's chosen to be the leader of this dispensation. This is more what this is referring to. His spiritual journey is going to come to an abrupt end. And we know, even what we talked about at the top of this episode, how important Martin Harris's testimony was. Oliver Cowdery, David Whitmer, how important their testimonies were, because they all lived such separate lives. So never could there be more separate people, but keep the same story. Oliver being a lawyer, Martin leaving the church they all left the church under difficult circumstances, but then Martin moving to Utah, joining the church again, Oliver coming back to the church, and David Whitmer never coming back to the church. So really, really interesting. Part of it is that Joseph Smith, they're having a discussion in the morning, and Joseph walks over to Martin Harrison and he puts his hand on me. He says, if you humble yourself, you're going to be yours. And then David Whitmer is out in the field, and Oliver and Joseph walk over to David Whitmer, and they tell David that he's going to be a witness. And then literally they drop what they're doing and they walk straight into the woods. And the episode of the three witnesses occurs. We know that the men were all praying. They were chatting and they were all taking it in turns to pray. No angel appeared. Martin Harris would excuse himself, disappear into the woods. And then when he did, the angel came down to the Oliver and David. And then Joseph goes and finds Martin, and then they have the exact same session from the angel. And they hear God. They hear God tell them it's the most correct book. Not perfect book, not completely translated, not book in whole, not never to be changed book, but the most correct book of any book. Okay, well, that's another episode If You Could Haitakola podcast. How grateful we are to be studying the history of the church, and so grateful to the Whitmers and Harris and Cowdery, and what incredible legacy that they all left behind for us to study and grow our testimonies on. Catch you next week for another episode. Check us out on YouTube, and don't forget to subscribe. Check us out on Facebook. Check us out on Instagram. And we will see you next week.